Welcome back to Clarkston Lighthouse Guidance. My name's Chandler Fleming, and I'm the owner and chief therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling. Welcome to our show.
And I'm Victoria Fleming, and I am owner and therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling as well. And today we have a difficult topic.
We certainly do. I titled it Affairs and Infidelity, Trying to Understand the Ununderstandable.
The ununderstandable, and that's difficult to say, but it's very true because it's difficult to understand what an affair is and why affairs occur.
Sure.
And then how to recover from them. So it's a big topic.
And it's a huge topic, and you know what? It's difficult to define what is an affair. Some people define it as touch or money or secrecy, things along those lines, but it's really difficult to tell. I went to a conference on affairs, and a bunch of therapists, nobody could come up with a good definition of an affair. And at this conference, they used a bunch of different examples of what is an affair, is it an affair, is it not an affair? So I thought I'd come up with some questions for you guys and give you some examples. You tell me, is it an affair?
Absolutely. Okay, so in example number one, we have a 40-year-old female married for 20 years. She has an internet relationship with a man who is 60 years old. They're 1,000 miles apart. They've been talking every day, and it provides just a sense of security and comfort. She looks forward to the time together. She feels that she loves this man who's 1,000 miles away. They've never met, they've never sexted, and yet they are taking time, to meet internet, but they're not going to meet face to face.
Right.
Is that an affair? Yeah, I know.
You tell me. It's kind of difficult. It
I
was actually a case that I had, and one of the wife was doing that. She was texting a guy 20 years older than him, and they had this email relationship. He counted it as an affair, and she did not. So over time, I think she recognized that it was at least dangerous, and that's one of the things about these examples is that it's hard to define what is an affair, what's not an affair, but that's not really the standard. The standard is it good for the relationship or is it not good for the relationship?
Absolutely, yeah. And if she's sharing more with this individual who's 1,000 miles away than she is with her partner, with her spouse, then it does become an emotional connection where the husband's feeling left out.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, all right, so we have another example.
Classic example. Guy, 50 years old, has a great secretary. She's 30, attractive, and he secretly lends her $4,000 for her college. Doesn't really mention it to anyone, doesn't tell his spouse. It's kind of a secret sort of thing. They never have any physical touch. And they never really see each other outside of work, but occasionally after work he stays late to help her with her college work. He says, hey, you know what, I'm just helping somebody out, but it's a secret. Isn't an affair.
And I think even in the definition when we were looking at the secret component of it, why is it that you would need to keep this from your spouse?
Well, my spouse is really jealous and she wouldn't understand and she'd blow it out of proportion and make it into something ugly.
So even if it's not an affair at this point in time, it has the risk.
It has the risk.
It has the potential for.
Yep.
All right, we have another example. And that one involves what? Some co-workers. Tell about this one.
Okay, so both the partners are married, they work together, and they kind of kiss on each other, just on the cheek. They're very flirtatious. Both couples even get together on weekends, maybe they go out, and they don't behave any differently when their spouses are around. They laugh and joke and make some innuendos towards each other, but you know what? They hug a lot, kiss a lot, laugh a lot, joke a lot.
And that one, wow, even as you and I were talking about it before, that one's just a little more complicated because like you said, when they're with each other, the four of them, the two couples come together, they behave in the same manner.
Yep.
And yet there seems to be risk involved.
There's definitely risk involved.
So
you know what? There's no perfect definition of an affair, but it is a relationship where energy is being taken away from the marriage, and it can be hurtful to the marital relationship, or it has a high potential. And a lot of times people undervalue what that is. They really don't recognize how much it is affecting their relationship. until the quicksand kicks in, until they find themselves deeper and deeper. And then they start to miss the other person or long to see them or can't wait to get back to work. And at that point, a lot of times people are already hooked. They're already into that situation.
And I like the fact that it has high potential, because even if it's not yet a full affair,
Sure.
there's that high potential, that high risk for. And if the other partner is feeling threatened or at risk
Right.
or vulnerable, then it's time to evaluate. It's like a riptide. You want to know what you're going to do to get out of the mess before you get into the mess.
Yep. And the standard really is it not is it a affair or not an affair? The standard really is this beneficial for my relationship? Is my marital relationship primary, and am I doing something that has a risk or takes energy away? And that's a better standard than, hey, is this wrong or right? It's really, is this good for my relationship, or does this have a risk of being bad, or is it bad for my relationship?
So then not only are we getting into the fact that it's difficult to nail down exactly what the definition is. In the past, it would have definitely been a sexual relationship, that is an affair. But then when you start adding the secret factor, the money factor, the communication factor, let's throw in myths.
Sure.
Now there are also some myths out there about affairs that even more complicate the ununderstandable.
Sure.
So one of those myths is that happily married people do not have affairs. Why is that a myth?
Well, research shows that people rate their marriage as being very high. People say things like, it was in love, and that it really had nothing to do with my relationship. There is some gender bias there, where women are more likely to point to having an unhappy marriage as being a reason for the affair. But happily married people have affairs. And there's a lot of research to support that.
And I think that's interesting. I think happily married people have an affair the same reason a strong swimmer can drown in a riptide.
Sure.
There's this assumption that all is well, and rather than safeguarding and being aware, the person jumps in
Yep.
and doesn't realize what they've gotten themselves into. Okay, so there's another myth out there, and this is a myth that if their partner has lost interest in them, then there must be an affair going on. Okay.
And you know what? Sometimes that's completely opposite. I know a lot of people who find themselves in an affair and feel guilty. So they treat their spouse much better. They're much more kind. They're on their best behavior. And sometimes they're even trying to test it out. They're trying to say, hey, if I'm really good at home and I really pour into my marital relationship, maybe I'll be able to give up the affair. Maybe if I'm more affectionate with my spouse, then I'll be able to give up this affair. So oftentimes, there's not a sign. The sign is that the relationship is much better than it was in the past.
Okay, so we can't always assess that loss of interest, because it could be stress at work that's actually the loss of interest.
Yes.
But the individual could actually be more interested, like you said, because they're trying to make up for and even cover up what is going on. All right, so there's another myth out there. In fact, there are several more, and there's another one that says that a person wants out of the relationship, that they are having an affair because they want out of the relationship. True or not true?
Not true. There's a lot of people who have an affair to save the relationship. They feel like the relationship is dead, that there's nothing there, and they're somewhat intentional. They somewhat want to get caught to create this crisis. So you have those people. But I would say the vast majority of people want both. They want their affair and they want their marriage. And most people don't really give a lot of thought to having an affair. It is something that they find themselves in like quicksand. Hey, this is safe, I'm okay, and I can get out, it's only up to my ankles. And then when it's up to their knees and their waist and they're drowning in it, they fight hard to get out, but they're stuck.
Okay, so I want to tackle a little bit, but most want both. What do we do with that? That most people would want both?
I think you have to recognize that, and this is one of the toughest things dealing with couples in affairs, is that they do want both. That they want to be married and they want their family and they want the financial security, but they also want the excitement of the affair and the new feeling of being alive and wonderful. And I frequently say to my couples that an affair is the best thing in your life until it's not, then it's the worst thing in your life. That there is a certain amount of new vitality, and chemically our bodies go crazy. When they study certain hormones in the body of people having affairs, those hormones are going wild. And some of those hormones are very cocaine-like. They make you feel alive and important, and so it can be wonderful till it's not. So you want that excitement, you want that wonderful part, but you also want a family and a future and stability. So most people want both.
And I think that's an important part, though, about the addictive quality of it, is that you want both until that affair relationship becomes not addicting anymore, before those romance feelings and all of that flutter begins to fade away, because the reality is the romance part, that flutter part, doesn't stay forever in a marriage or in the affair. So the high will wear off.
Right. But unfortunately, the high usually wears off after the marriage has dissolved, after they made that decision. And the true torment of it is not being able to have both. That you can't have this on the side, and the two eventually collide.
And I like that leads us perfectly into the next myth. People tend to assume that an affair automatically means divorce. Is that true?
No, some people survive affairs, and some people actually not just survive, they thrive. They find a new energy in their relationship. They find a way to fix things. And there's actually a book out there, My Husband's Affair is the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Our Marriage. So the affair is sometimes a wake-up call to really look at what is your marital relationship like and how to make it more successful. Divorce doesn't usually solve the problems. It just adds more problems to it.
Absolutely, especially when children are involved. It
Sure.
just gets so complicated. All right, so we've already talked about the fact that this is hard to understand, and it seems like there's a lot of disagreement even in the world of psychology.
Sure.
Let's hit on some of that. What are some of the areas in which, even in the world of psychology, there's some disagreement or I don't know, just discussion?
Sure. So one of the main things is, why do people have affairs? And there's a huge amount of disagreement. Some reasons that most people cite is, they do it for excitement or a sex drive, or their relationship is broken, or maybe to repair their current relationship, a midlife crisis. These are all reasons why people list why somebody has an affair. There's also value judgments in that. They have an affair because they're a bad person, because they're evil, because they have bad character. And character definitely plays a role in it, but the vast majority of people who have affairs never intend on having an affair. They're in a healthy relationship, but they make bad choices, and they put themselves in situations where an affair is likely.
Okay, so all right, so let's explore even more why people have affairs.
Okay.
I know that you have referenced the fact that women will tend to say that they were not as happy in their relationship, and that may be a reason that they ended up, getting involved in the affair, but not so much for the man.
Yes.
So, but as we look at this, what do we do with? So we're saying that people in happy, healthy relationships can have an affair. We're saying that people don't necessarily plot out, and this is what I'm going to do to mess up my marriage, have an affair. What is the whole, I know there's this discussion of the trust me element that can lead a person into the quicksand, into the riptide, into an affair.
People oftentimes ask me, why did my partner have an affair, or how did you think I ended up having an affair? And I talk about the trust me game. When I lived in Michigan until I was in 8th grade, then I moved to Tennessee. And in 8th grade, the boys and girls played a game where the girl would put her leg out and the guy would put his hand on her leg and say, trust me. And it would start at the knee, and it was pretty safe and innocent at that point. But it was a little forbidden. And it was exciting. You were touching a girl's knee. And as the school year moved on, you found the hands moving closer and closer to the pelvic area. And why did that happen? Well, it seemed safe. There was a certain level of trust. Why did they play the game? It was exciting. it was a little bit forbidden. And then what I noticed is that occasionally when a guy was pulling his hand away, he would deliberately touch the girl in the pelvic area, or, it was kind of surprising too, that occasionally the girl would slide forward. Why? Well, that game, that excitement, that barrier just kept eroding. And that's what happens in affairs, where people start out and it's just fun, it's innocent. There's nowhere close to being inappropriate or inappropriate touch. But as time goes on, that desire just gets stronger and stronger. And it just moves towards a situation where things are inappropriate.
Well, you and I we're going on 28 years of marriage in December, and I can remember after we had been married for a year, we asked each other, what do you miss most about single life? Do you remember? I think we answered the same thing.
Yeah, we miss the game. We miss the excitement of flirting with other people and showing that we still had it.
Absolutely. And and I think that can be true. You mentioned midlife crisis, that maybe it's not the trust me game where the hand's at the knee, but at work, you and a coworker end up at the coffee pot at the same time, and there's a knuckles brush, grabbing for the coffee pot, and then it becomes ooh, I see so-and-so's at the coffee machine, I'm gonna go. And then it becomes, now we're both having our mug of coffee at the coffee station for 10 minutes, and then, oh, let's have lunch. So it's this gradual, and there is something exciting about the game. There's something exciting about the flirting, and that's what we have to be careful of. And that's how 85% of the people actually say that they ended up in an affair. Is it just started out gradually.
Sure. So, when I talk about the 85-15, and I find, in my experience with my clients, 85% of the time, it starts off as an innocent friendship. I would encourage you guys to go to my Facebook page on the Clarkston Lighthouse Guidance and look at the Harry Met Sally video. Can men and women be friends? The answer to that is no. I get a lot of disagreement from people about that, but sooner or later sex interjects into the relationship, and that's how most people start. They start out with something that's a safe friendship and it erodes. Unfortunately, about 15% of the time, the person's a player. They really have a difficult time remaining faithful. Maybe their sex drive is too high or something along those lines. I think most of those people are what I call intimacy craver avoiders.
Let's explain that. Intimacy cravers avoiders.
Sure.
Because it seems like it's a contradiction of terms, and yet it's opposite sides of the same issue. So on the one hand, this individual significantly craves intimacy. They want to be in a meaningful relationship. But on the other hand, as soon as it starts moving in that direction, there's a fear factor that jumps in and they push away. And so it's a difficult thing. So in that 15%, you do have people. I think Elizabeth Taylor would be a great example of someone who was both sides of that coin, in and out of marriages where she wanted that intimate relationship, but then all of the things that come up with relationships, morning breath, laundry that has to be done, enters in, it gets complicated, he sees her flaws, and then she pushes away.
And it's really not seeing the flaws, it's really the closeness. The person in the relationship feels vulnerable. They love this person so much, and they recognize that they're dependent. And because of that closeness, they feel weak and vulnerable. So they bail. They say, this is too real. This person could hurt me too much. I really can't trust them. What if they die? What if they cheat on me? So it's that the relationship goes really, really well. And it's hard to work with these people because as the relationship repairs, they bail. They go, wow, this is way too real.
This is too, okay. So let's look at some of the statistics and some of what we're looking at in terms of men and women. And, so we have men who are more willing to admit sexual contact or intimacy.
Sure.
Okay, and then what are some of the other statistics?
So men are much more willing to admit to physical contact. And women are more likely to point out the fact that the affair was based upon something in the relationship. But most people, one study says about 14% of women and 22% of men admit to having an affair. And of those, about 34% do survive the affair. Again, it's very difficult to study this because you can't really go around and ask people, hey, did you have an affair? There's an airport study that they did that, but it's hard to get good, solid data.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to go over is kind of a case study that sums it up at all. And it points out the naiveness of some people. So I did premarital counseling with a couple called Tim and Kim, and they were high school sweethearts. They went to different colleges, and in that premarital counseling, we talked about relationships, and she would go to the bar with her friends that were a bunch of guys, and he wouldn't go because they had a different history. And I said, after you're married, are you going to continue this? Sure, nothing will happen. I love my husband. I said, I really don't recommend this. That, this is not a good idea, that friendships, they cross the line. No, I'm a good people, and I just don't think of those guys that way. Well, about probably 8 or 9 months later, I get a call from Tim saying, you were right. Kim said to me that she was at the bar, she was drinking, she was too drunk to go home, so they went on the couch and she ended up making out with a guy, and then the story got larger and larger as time went on. This couple had unrealistic expectations. They forgot their human nature, that sooner or later, given that much level of temptation and then mixing it with alcohol, people give in to their desires. And most of us really are not that strong. So love and trust is two separate things, and people that really love someone sometimes do bad things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said unrealistic expectations in that as long as I trust, then it's all going to work out.
Sure.
And
or
yet
as
there
long
was,
as I love.
right.
I'm trustworthy.
Okay, so what are some things that couples can do? So I think we very much set it up that happily married people, that in our humanness, that it's not a deliberate, hey, I'm
Sure.
going to mess things up, that is poor boundaries perhaps. What can we do as couples? We're a happily married couple.
Sure.
What can we do to safeguard?
Sure. So one is recognize your humanness. And what I mean by that humanness is that we are all capable of having an affair. And people don't want to believe that. But given the right situation over a repeated number of times, anybody's capable of having an affair. So you got to recognize that and enter the game with that. Also build transparency. Know that where your spouse is. That doesn't mean that you're policing everything about them, but that a relationship should be open, that there shouldn't be secret communication and secret things in the relationship. Also recognize the cost, that oftentimes people get caught up in the excitement of hey, this is great and it's harmless and whatever. The reality is the cost can be really high. Relationships, financial, just your own self-awareness and your own self-concept. And oftentimes develop safe same-sex relationships, that people that you're not attracted to of the same gender can help meet some of those needs. Most relationships, 100% of your needs are not going to be met, but some of those friendship needs and belonging needs sometimes need to be sought out elsewhere. And then help guard your partner. That if your partner is doing something unwise, let them know, hey, I'm not comfortable. Let's talk about what's going on. Hey, I noticed you've been staying late at work and helping your secretary with her homework. Who all's there? And part of that conversation is that love and trust are two different things. And that just because you love somebody doesn't mean you 100% trust their ability to overcome.
And as you said, it's just that transparency. And that's where some good communication skills are so important, because the tone in which I say, hey bud, why were you out so late? It seems like this is becoming a pattern.
Sure.
Is different than where were you, and full of accusation.
Yes.
But we need to keep open communication. And we just need to be aware that any of us are vulnerable, and to set healthy boundaries, to start noticing, gosh, I seem to be wanting to meet up with this person on a regular basis. Dangerous sign. And so there can be very healthy communications with your spouse to help prevent. We don't want to meet you in our office because there's been an affair and your heart has been broken, but we will if you need that help.
I want to talk about part 2. In part 2, this is going to be a 2-part series, so we're going to discuss what to do if you discover an affair, the truth about trust, How could something that felt so right turn out to be so wrong? And how to move from surviving to thriving. And I just want to leave you guys with two thoughts. Thought one is that affairs are survivable, in that there are ways to save the relationship, and oftentimes it's worth it, that the quality of the relationship does improve. And the second part is just a tribute to those that have turned the corner, that they discovered an affair and did the hard work. I recognize your pain and suffering and the difficult times that you've been through. But some of you guys are my heroes, that you did the hard work and know that it was worth it.
Absolutely.
And so please join us for part 2.
Thank you very much for joining us here on Clarkston Lighthouse Guidance.
The views expressed in this show are for general educational purposes only and do not constitute professional advice on any subject matter, nor do they necessarily reflect the views or opinions of its guests or of Independence Television. If mental health assistance is needed, please seek professional licensed treatment.